You happen to have caught me on a beautiful sunny day here in the middle of Kent, Down village, just south of London. And it's here that Charles Darwin spent much of his later years conducting his research into the mechanisms for evolution and evolution itself. This is often called the Sandwalk, or Darwin's thinking path, a 1.5 acre oblong strip of land. And it's along this path that Charles Darwin spent much of his later years talking and discussing and thinking about evolution. Darwin was a well-connected scientist. He spent much of his time waiting for mail to arrive from friends and colleagues overseas. And when working at the desk became too much, he would come out here and he would set up cobbles of flint, 5 or 6. And every time he'd done a lap of this piece of land, he would then kick one of the flints to a side. His children often used to play tricks on him and push back the kicked flints to where they were, confusing Darwin in the process. This particular piece of land is probably one of the most famous in the eyes of biological scientists and palaeoanthropology students like myself. In 1871, he published a book on the origins of humanity, and in it he was a little bit more specific about who he thought, or where he thought, humans would have arose. He suggested that based on the anatomy of gorillas, chimpanzees and primates in Africa, it seems likely that Africa is the origin of humanity. His ideas were not really readily accepted until about the 1970s and 80s, when work by people like Chris Stringer showed that the morphological evidence suggests otherwise to what was then accepted, that Asia was the origin of humanity. By the 1960s, Darwin's idea of natural selection as the main driving force for evolution in general was more readily accepted as well. But today, in the area of human evolution, we are going beyond Darwin. We've left Darwin behind, and we're now focusing on the intricate aspects of our evolution. We know we came from Africa. We know we are animals. We know we are primates. But specifically, what happened? How did that process take place? The first breakthrough in Africa for human evolution was the discovery of fossil hominins in the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. But Ethiopia was a far-out region, very distant and unexplored. 1974 was a watershed moment in human evolution, when the work of Donald Johanson and his team discovered the nearly complete fossil of a young woman, an Australopithecus afarensis, nicknamed Lucy, a very special fossil. Its completedness allowed scientists to look at more than just the skull. The Holy Grail of paleoanthropology is finding complete skeletons. There's no point in finding the cranium. The cranium is only one part of an ecosystem, shall we say. In 2005, a fossil was found in the Woronso Mile site in Ethiopia, and the project was headed by Johannes Haile Selassie of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. But they have finally published a raft of 9 papers on the fossil specifically. And one thing that it definitely demonstrates is the fact that the leg bones of Australopithecus afarensis were more human-like than Lucy led us to believe. This fossil KSDVP1/1 is often nicknamed Kadunimu, Noel Afar word. And this particular fossil is an adult, and that's what's key here. We are looking at an adult Australopithecus afarensis and a near complete skeleton. But the find in Eastern Africa of Kadunimu is now being eclipsed by something truly amazing. The discovery of 1,550 fossil bones from a cave site in South Africa, the Rising Star Cave System. Based on diagrams that have been published of the cave sediments, we don't know very much about what is going on in those sediments. And that will prove vital if we are to understand the age of these specimens, these individuals, and to understand how they got in there at all. For me at the moment, it's an interesting hypothesis that the original dragon's back boulder that now clogs the entrance into the Dinaledi chamber in the Rising Star cave system was dislodged from the ceiling. At the moment, you climb up the dragon's back boulder and you slide down a gap, and the gap narrows to about 8 inches in some places. But once you get down into the chamber, then the question you ask yourself then is, how did these hominins get in through this shaft? One hypothesis is that the boulder was originally connected to the ceiling and the entrance was underneath it. But one curious case is the type of sediments we're seeing in the chamber before the Dinaledi chamber, which has rough, coarse sediments, obviously indicative of a high energy chamber. Whereas the sediments in the Dinaledi chamber is much finer, much more settled, which tells us that we are looking at a low energy environment. We're not seeing flash floods coming in here, knocking in little boulders into the cave system. So what's going on here? The problem is in Africa, South Africa in particular, it's very difficult to date cave sites. Sterkfontein, Makapansgat, they all have massive difficulties in being dated. At the moment with South Africa, you have paleomagnetic dating, uranium series dating, and biostratigraphic dating. They are the main go-to dating techniques that the paleoanthropologists use in South Africa. In Eastern Africa it's a little easier. It was a more volcanic region, and so when you have phospholiferous sediments, they're usually sandwiched between volcanic layers, and they are easily dated and ridiculously more accurate than any other dating technique. Biostratigraphic dating has its uses, but it's only useful if you have nothing else to use to date the sites. So this is an exciting time for paleoanthropologists. In some ways you wish Darwin was here to realize how much we have learned and how much we still need to know. The beauty of paleoanthropology is that for every new discovery there are a million questions. And this keeps us going. This keeps us going.